Hello and welcome to the Cool Kids live review and discussion of Napoleon. And I would say there are spoilers, but I mean this is Napoleon actual history. So, um, anyway, let's go ahead and get started. You know how this works, so I'll start us off. Um, honestly, um, I thought maybe I had viewed the wrong film because I really did not see everybody's problem with this film. Um, I really did not see, if I can get my review. I mean, I was wondering if I missed something. Did I see a different movie than everyone else? Did I just hallucinate an entirely different film? Was I high PCP at the time? I don't think so, uh, because I really don't see what everyone's issue is with this film. On the one hand, I get that historical epics are almost always divisive on some level. Historians and history nerds nitpick every single inaccuracy to death. I literally saw someone complaining and getting all up in his feelings because the pronunciation of St. Helena was wrong and because the banners at the Battle of Waterloo were wrong. I mean, but anyway, well, one side or the other takes umbrage with the supposed politics of the film, and film critics and film nerds feast on everything else. They're almost like a free for all in that regard, getting roasted by all sides in a multi pronged assault. That's surely been the case here. But on the other hand, I don't get it. The complaint seems so nonsensical. As far as Hollywood goes, it's a fairly accurate film. Well respected historians such as Dan Snow and Napoleon biographer Michael Browers, an Oxford professor and consultant on the film, who's written a 3-volume biography of Napoleon, confirmed that it's broadly accurate. We all know, or we should by now, that he didn't really shoot the top of the Great Pyramid. Napoleon was far too respectful for that. But it's long been obvious this was merely Scott's artistic, wryly humorous way of saying that Napoleon was using the Egyptian campaign as make his mark on history. He literally says in the film that he was following in the footsteps of Alexander the Great and Caesar. His words. And he didn't really meet Napoleon, but it makes sense for him to use Wellington in that scene rather than some random naval officer. The biggest sins I can think of in terms of historical inaccuracy are implying that he left his men in Egypt to deal with Josephine, when actually it was because the Abbé Sieyès offered him a key role in the coup against the Directory. Napoleon slapping Josephine when he never would have done so. Getting the year of his birth wrong, at least when he marries Josephine. I'm pretty sure they said 1768 when he was born in 1769. And it sounded like they said 1767 for her when she was born in 1763. She was 6 years older than him, which became a big issue later because she was too old to have kids. And placing the divorce over the issue of her inability to give him an heir, placing the divorce before the Treaty of Tilsit with Alexander I, when in fact that came 3 years after. But although that little change is wholly understandable from a pacing perspective, the rest are nitpicks, such as Marie Antoinette's hair not being shaved before meeting the national razor, although that is understandable from a visual perspective because you want the audience to immediately recognize her as Marie Antoinette, and Napoleon not really having been in Paris to witness her execution, although he was there to see her and Louis XVI run in prison, and that change makes sense as it's a much more dramatic way to convey his revulsion and fright at the terror of the mob. Napoleon was nothing if not an advocate for law and order. As far as accuracy goes, this one scores fairly high, as Scott said, and both historians I mentioned above agree. By the way, this is a film, not a documentary. So, as Scott said, get over it. Again, I find it to be fairly accurate. Others may disagree, but I challenge them to show me any facts beyond Napoleon, ultimate Chad, her. He really was totally besotted with Josephine against the objections of his family, I might add, who openly wondered what he could possibly see in a widowed single mother past her prime. She was 6 years older than him, like I said. His letters to her really were exposed in the papers, causing him great embarrassment. She really did cuckold him early in their marriage until he put his foot down and threatened to leave her. He really was an inexperienced lover by his own admission. He said so in his letters. He really was insecure when it came to her, and he really was ambitious to a fault. These are indisputable facts, uncontroversial to all but the most ardent Napoleon supporters. I love the guy as much as anybody. I love him warts and all, and not as I wish him to be. Napoleon was nothing if not a great self-propagandist, shaping his own legend in real time. So it is all the more important to separate reality from fiction where he is concerned. The film does that rather well, giving us a portrait of a fascinating man, brilliant in war, yet insecure and vulnerable in love. This is a film where Napoleon's rise and fall is told through the lens or against the backdrop of his relationship with Josephine. Notice how in the film they structure so that his relationship with Josephine, as it flourishes, his career flourishes. He rises to the top. He conquers, he becomes emperor. He conquers Europe. And as it starts to, as he breaks it off, that's when the downslide starts. So Joaquin Phoenix does a great job of this portrayal, showing us his towering ambition, his stunning genius, and even his softer side. Many of the complaints of sitting around the great man being made so pathetic, but a worshipful portrait. This is not, yet neither is it satire. It shows the man for the flawed genius he was. It shows his good and the bad. I found it to be rather balanced, honestly. He even included his tendency towards self-promotion and the fact that he did so much to shape his own legacy. For example, even after his capture on board the HMS Bellerophon, awaiting transport to his final exile on St. Helena, he holds the rapt attention of a group of young boys on the crew, peppering them with pithy maxims as he devours his succulent meal. Later on the Isle of, that's where he says the line we heard from the trailers. I'm first to admit when I make a mistake, I simply never do. This is after the man has been defeated at Waterloo. He still cannot admit it. And later on the island of St. Helena, he engages in another bit of myth making, insisting against common knowledge that he burned Moscow, unable to resist embellishing his legend one last time. It's a humorous acknowledgement that Napoleon devoted the rest of his life in exile to shaping his legacy, writing his memoirs as one last masterstroke to redeem his reputation and have the last word. As I said, Napoleon was nothing if not a great promoter. As for the aforementioned softer side, the film does not work without Vanessa Kirby as Josephine, the one true love of our titular hero, at least besides France, the army, and most of all himself. Here, Kim, as is mentioned at the very end of the film, matter of fact, his last three words were France, army, Josephine. Her chemistry with Joaquin Phoenix's Napoleon is outstanding. It not only keeps the film going in its slower moments between the momentous battle scenes, but it also ties the story together from beginning to end. She comes across very much as her own character, someone who has tied her destiny to this man for perhaps less than romantic reasons initially, but who came to depend on him deeply and love him dearly. She steals his heart and ours in every scene. It's a performance worthy of an Oscar nomination, in my humble opinion. She nearly steals the show. Perhaps most impressively, the film manages to pack so much of Napoleon's life into such a relatively short time frame, a mere 2 hours and 38 minutes, getting almost every major event along the way, from the siege of Toulon as a young artillery officer, where he first becomes a brigadier general, to breaking the back of the Royalist rebellion with a whiff of grape shot, as the real Napoleon reportedly said, to the invasion of Egypt, to a very accurate depiction of the coup of 18th Brumaire, to his coronation. And yes, he did shockingly seize the crown from the Pope and crown himself. He literally crowned himself the emperor. To the sheer genius of his victory at Austerlitz, to his fascination with Alexander I at Tilsit, to his disastrous invasion of Russia, complete with the costly Battle of Borodino, to his first exile on Elba, to his triumphant return. And yes, that scene really did happen, even if it was staged. Napoleon, the self-promoter of his own legend, remember, to his ultimate defeat at Waterloo, to his final exile on St. Helena, plus, of course, the aforementioned relationship with his beloved Josephine. Whew! It makes for some very brisk pacing. And whatever else you say about the film, you surely can't say it's boring. If there is one complaint I can kind of see, even if I disagree, is that the tone has been said to be uneven. It surely feels different in the slower moments between battle scenes, which, as mentioned beforehand, mainly focus on the relationship between Napoleon and Josephine. Such scenes have an air of lighthearted sweetness, even comedy about them, which contrasts sharply with the more somber scenes of battle or politics. I can see how such a contrast may be jarring to some, yet I find it a necessary break from the grim realities of war. The humor works for me, not for the least reason being that I love the chemistry between the two leads, but also because it gives us a peek at a side of the great man we don't often see. It's an incredibly intimate portrait, perhaps so close as to make some uncomfortable. If I had a complaint, it's that I wish we had gotten to see more Napoleon, the brilliant administrator, the man who constructed the Napoleonic Code, still used as the basis of the legal systems for 40 countries. Including obviously France, much of Europe, virtually all of Latin America. the enlightened despot who reformed both France and Elba in line with rational principles. It's an important key to getting a full picture of the man, to understanding that, again, like Alexander and Caesar, he was not just a conqueror, but a visionary as well. But again, given the time constraints and the incredible fact of what he was actually able to include in such a relatively short runtime, I really can't complain. I'm willing to wait for the 4-hour director's cut of the film to see if it's included there. For now, given the time constraints, this was enough. The battle scenes are undoubtedly the best parts of the film. Scott had lost none of his touch here, capturing the extreme brutality of the era on film with sublime violence, the kind that grabs your attention and won't let you turn away, like passing a bloody wreck on the road. As with a raging bull, the cinematography serves to highlight and condemn the violence rather than glorify it. Napoleon's dark genius sacrificed millions of lives on the altar of his ambition, and Scott does not shy away from it. Given the subject matter, Ridley Scott has made a great accomplishment here. A film about Napoleon was bound to be divisive no matter what, and capturing everything in just over 2.5 hours is well nigh impossible. The fact that Ridley Scott was able to get so close is a testament to his greatness as a director. He gives us Napoleon the man as well as the legend. Whether that works for you depends on you. And perhaps, as with the man himself, how we feel about it says more about ourselves than it does about the film. So, and my rating, after that very long review, is a 9.5 out of 10. So,
I think you deserve it, Mark. I'm just gonna say that. I think you deserve a long review. This is your bread and butter. You deserve it. It's okay.
Yeah, I would agree, because I mean, you're the history guy, so I mean, and I knew this was like your most anticipated movie, so I'm not surprised that it was I'm surprised that you went on it for 10 minutes. So
yeah,
I'm just shocked you didn't take the full hour. I'm surprised that you just managed to condemn it to just.
No, it'll be like once we get to the be like once Mark's done. My rating is a 9.5 out of 10. Now we reached the 1 hour mark. Thanks for watching. Bye.
No. Next time we're gonna get Mark's director's cut review, which is going to be about an hour.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
everybody else.
Just want to say hey to Zach and Devin.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, Rob, it's your time to shine.
All right, let me go ahead. So don't worry, my review won't not be as long as that one. I promise you. Okay, so truth be told, my knowledge on Napoleon Bonaparte is very limited. I'm not like a massive history buff like this guy here. I mean, I'm aware of him. I'm aware he is a powerful conqueror and fought just so many battles, including the Battle of Waterloo. But I mean, there's not really a whole lot I knew about too much going in. However, what got me interested in this movie was one man, Ridley Scott. So, and I love a lot of Ridley Scott's movies. I haven't seen every single one, but from what I have seen, he's very talented. I love the first Alien, Gladiator, The Martian, just all that is. He's a very talented director, especially when it comes to like his massive epics like Gladiator. The one thing that got me worried though was the mixed reception, but I will say that thankfully after seeing it, I realized that there was nothing to be worried about, since this is honestly a very satisfying movie. And yeah, Ridley Scott has done it once again. The acting is spectacular all around. Joaquin Phoenix does an amazing job. He's always amazing in anything, and he does a great job as the French conqueror. And it's good to see him finally in a good movie after that thing earlier this year that I will not mention. Vanessa Kirby, she does a wonderful job as well as Napoleon's wife, Josephine. I know there were some things that honestly I was not. I was kind of surprised about. Like I said, I'm not a massive history guy. I'm not an expert on Napoleon, so I don't know how accurate it is. But like some of the things that happened in it kind of surprised me that I was just not expecting. The other cast, like Ben Miles, Matthew Needham, Tahar Rahim, and Lou Divine Well, I'm sorry if I butcher like a lot of these names, but they all do wonderful jobs with their performances. The production design, the sets, they all look fantastic. Same goes for the cinematography, the costumes, the musical score. All of it fits that style of like the late 18th to early 19th century when Napoleon was like when the French conquer was take place. The action scenes they display the brutality of like these battles that Napoleon fought through to get where he is. I will say that if I did have some problems, like maybe the pacing could have been smoothed out just a little bit. It didn't ruin it. It wasn't bad, but I feel like it could have been smoothed out just a tad bit. And like Mark said, the tone was a little uneven here and there with like the slower moments and the battle scene. I feel like it could have been a little bit better. So, but anyway, those are probably just more minor things. But I mean, that doesn't ruin the movie at all for me, and I would still recommend it. Still recommend this movie overall. If you were worried about this movie based on what critics are saying, I can happily tell you that those critics are full of shit. This film is just a really good time, and I would at least tell people to go give this film a chance. Ridley Scott, you're the man, and I can't wait to see what you bring next. And my score is a 7.5 out of 10.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. All right, John.
I don't have anything written down, so I'm just gonna fucking wing it. So I literally just got back from seeing the movie about an hour and a half ago. So I still have it relatively fresh in my mind, and I thought it was well done, but it should have been a lot better. Mainly, things I'll get into later, but for now, the acting was very, very good. I thought Vanessa Kirby, as Mark said, pretty much stole the show. She easily gave the best performance, and she was just one of the best parts about the movie. And I also felt the supporting cast, Rupert Everett, and the only one that comes to mind that is, and a couple others were all very good. Joaquin Phoenix gave a very good performance, but I feel like it should have been better. Whether that was up to him or Ridley Scott, I don't know. But in terms of it just felt like something was missing from him. Like I feel like there should have been a more like, the best I can say about it is like there should have been, I know this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but like an Oscar moment. I feel like there was a real, like, when me and my family were talking about this in the car after seeing it, my sister mentioned um, how in his performance in Gladiator gave us that big Oscar moment with that monologue towards his nephew in the film. Was like, okay, I understand why this guy got an Oscar nomination, but here we never really got that. We never got that psychological turn for him. And it was overall very subdued, very grounded. And when I feel like there should have been a little bit more from him, not a bad performance. I wouldn't be shocked if he got a nomination, and deserving, absolutely. But I feel like there should have been more with him. And it's so funny to see because one of the biggest cons for a lot of people was that he was cartoony, when that was not even close. Like, sure, he was like a little like weird in the love scenes with Vanessa Kirby's Josephine, but cartoony, bro, you need to watch more Popeye cartoons because I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. So even with Joaquin Phoenix, he was great here, but I feel like he should have been better, and he has done better performances, but overall the acting was still very good. The battle scenes were, of course, extravagant and great. Despite the fact that this was made for probably less than half of the Marvels, it looks infinitely better. And Ridley Scott knows how to film a battle scene and knows how to use the effects, if there were any, to his advantage to make it look like a $300 million movie when it was in fact only 130 or 120 million. So the man knows how to direct action, and he did that very well. The smaller scenes, the quieter scenes with Josephine and Napoleon were okay. I understand it. I get what they were going for, but for me, it just kind of felt kind of dragged on and it felt repetitive after a while. Same with the battle scenes. When we get to Waterloo, don't get me wrong, Waterloo was again one of the best battle scenes in the movie, but we're like, okay, we've seen this song and dance before, give us something a little bit more. And with that, I get to the worst part of the movie is definitely the pacing. Ironically, another thing that critics have said is that this felt very rushed. Again, what fucking movie are you watching? Can I see the rushed version of this? Because God knows I fucking needed it when I was falling asleep during the goddamn movie theater. Don't get me wrong. Great fucking movie, but this was slow as fucking shit. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, where is the rushed? Where is the rushness? I want to see rush. I want to see rushed. Give me Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes levels of rush. I want to see that. This was just an absolute slog at certain points, to the point I was falling asleep. I hate to say that because that is probably the worst thing you could probably do in a grandiose epic like this, but I felt terrible about it. But I was, again, it didn't help that the theater was nice and cozy and warm. I was in a comfortable position, so that also did not help matters either. So, it just that was the big thing for me. That was the pacing. And I feel like um that was the biggest deterrent for me, and it should have been better in that respect. And the thing is, I will say I didn't mind how it packed in so much into so little time. But knowing that there is a director's cut out there that is 4 hours, I just kept having that in the back of my mind when it kept like going from like vignette to vignette in terms of not just the battle scenes, but like, oh, we have this, then we have the coup, then we have this, then we have this, then we have this. It's like, okay, I feel like the pacing would probably be better in the 4 hour version, like kind of like how Kingdom of Heaven, you had the universally hated theatrical cut, and then you have the absolutely beloved director's cut. It's like, I feel like that'll happen here if that director's cut ever gets released. And it's so weird for a guy where the pacing, I'm like, okay, the pacing was slow, the pacing was terrible, blah, 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 blah. Yet I still want to see more. I want to see more of this. As Mark said, I felt like there was a lot of stuff missing here. And it's so weird to see the guy who did direct Kingdom of Heaven settled for 2.5 hours when honestly, just release the 4 hour cut in theaters. You got to learn from your mistakes, Ridley. I mean, come on. Just if it doesn't make money, fuck them. Who gives a shit? Just you'll have the history nerds and the people who actually give a shit about cinema watching this movie, and that's all that matters. But even despite this, but yeah, this is one of those movies where I feel like it just should have been better and it could have been better. Now, I'm not gonna like ignoring the fact about a director's cut and all that. I'm just judging it on the movie I saw, and I'm judging it here. A lot of it was very good, and I feel like, and I hate to make this comparison to such a horrible movie, but it kind of felt, in terms of my description, like Babylon a bit. Now, before you yell at me, don't yell at me yet. Don't yell at me yet. Don't Phantom Zone me, please. Just on the grounds, for me personally, it was the ingredients of a great movie were there, but it didn't quite reach that for me. It didn't quite get to that amazing point that I feel like it should have for me. Hence why I'm giving it the rating I will give it when I eventually do give it. It's not Babylon levels. Never. That definitely had a lot worse execution there. I'm just saying the execution here should have been better, and I wish it was better. And in terms of a 2.5 hour movie, I just wish we had a little bit more meat, not necessarily more footage, because I feel like he did do a good job here, but I feel like it just like better pacing. And also, I did want to mention before I end my review, my very haphazard review, is I don't know historical accuracy. I don't know if it was accurate or not. I'm not an expert in that case. However, I'm judging it purely on a movie, and I felt that the movie was very good. However, I feel like it should have been better, and the main great parts were the acting, were the battle scenes, was the music. The music was also really good. The setting and I felt that I didn't feel the tone was that bad. I didn't feel like it. It just felt natural. Like you have the war scenes, which are really fucked up and depressing, and then you have the scenes of him and his love being very light and fun. That worked for me. Like it wasn't jarring for me. It felt like it was kind of funny, like Napoleon barking like a dog, but like I feel like that it like worked. It still worked with what the tone they were going for. And I didn't mind it. So the acting, the music, the tone, the setting, the production design, the effects, wherever that was used, I thought all of that was very great. However, the cons is the pacing. Um, it left me wanting more, but not in a great way. And then I feel like Joaquin Phoenix should have been better. There was there was no like big psychological like turn, I guess. Another phrase my sister mentioned in terms of that big moment. Like I feel like once she said it, we all universally agreed that this was the case. He should have had a monologue once he quote unquote took Moscow. I feel like when he was sitting in the big chair, the big throne, he should have had something a little bit more bombastic, or after Josephine passed away. One of those scenes, he should have had something more. And I feel like that could have benefited to the overall, that could have binded everything together, as well as the fact I wasn't a huge fan of it going vignette by vignette. I feel like there could have been a little bit more tightness there, and I felt the writing was not as good as it could be. I feel like David Skerpa, I think, wrote this. I feel like just should have gotten John Logan back from Gladiator. I know scheduling conflicts with certain things, but I feel like he was the better writer here, and he should have. I feel like that trifecta tag team of Scott, Logan, and Phoenix, like with Gladiator, could have benefited it. But overall, not a bad movie. I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. I was a little bit disappointed, but I still overall think it was a very good movie. It just has a lot of things like that prevent it from being a little bit better. So with that, I give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Very good review. Very good.
Sorry
review.
if I wish I wrote it down because I was a little bit,
No, you're fine. You did great.
And uhs and like a little bit all over the place, but
you did great.
You did good, man. You did good. We all did. We all did good.
I thought you made a very good point though about him needing a monologue in there. I mean,
it's like you got Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon Bonaparte.
Exactly.
You needed to give him that. That would have been so
he needed
good.
That speech. Yeah, he did have he had a lot.
Maybe it's in the director's cut. Maybe we can hope.
Yeah,
but I didn't want to totally judge it because who knows if it's actually coming out or not. We don't know if it is.
Coronation might have been.
Ridley Scott confirmed it.
I honestly am wondering if when the 4-hour cut comes out, I'm kind of wondering if it's going to be similar to like the Snyder cut where it gets released on a streaming service kind of thing instead of just re-released in theater.
Seems like one of those Martin Scorsese or Christopher Nolan types where it's like death to streaming. So I feel like it'll get a physical media release instead. It might be released to Apple TV Plus though.
It is.
You know what, Rob? Rob, you might have a point there.
It's supposed to come out. The 4-hour cut is supposed to be on Apple TV Plus in early 2024.
Yeah, so
that's what I heard anyway.
I mean, I'll definitely give the 4-hour.
I definitely want to give it a chance because it left me with wanting more because I wanted to see more of Napoleon. I didn't hate the Josephine ex Napoleon scenes. I didn't hate those. It's just they got a little bit repetitive after a while. And I wanted
repetitive and slow,
and I wanted to see more Napoleon the general. I know that's not totally the story that Scott was going for, and I understand it. He wanted to go with something different. And I did mention this when I was talking with my family about it, is that they wanted to show a side that we don't really see. That we've gotten so many documentaries and films based on this fucking dude.
It is. I mean,
that Stanley Kubrick version. But we've gotten Napoleon the General, but the thing is, you have such a great director and you have such a great actor that I feel like you shouldn't have thrown that to the wayside, even though the story was more about him and Josephine. I get it, but I still want to see that, and I hope there's more of that in the cut that will be released. Hopefully.
You know, our mutual friend John Callum, he said that he wanted something more character focused, and that made me think. If I were to do one, I would love to do one about him on St. Helena, writing his memoirs, and maybe showing and do use that as kind of like the framework for the film, like a framing device for the film, and showing through flashbacks the difference between, you know, what he says and what really happened, you know, so you can kind of see.
You know what, that could be really good. Like, sort of like, don't call it Napoleon, because then that would give it some traction. Call it like The Legend of the Great Commander or something like that, or something like very like embellished, because I feel like that could be really interesting. You know, I feel like that could like work.
The little corporate nickname.
Mark, do you have Rome and Devon score?
Oh, yes, I do. Okay. They both said they liked the film despite some problems with it, and they both gave it. Devon gave it 7 out of 10, and Rome did the same.
Yeah. So unfortunately, neither one of them were able to write a review in time, but that's okay. We still have the rating, so we all gave it positive reviews. So, and I think we can, and just like I said in my review, Mark, like a lot of critics that are just bitching about this movie, they're just full of shit.
I mean, it's still been mostly positive. They haven't. It seemed to me that they liked the film, even that they didn't love it, because I mean,
because what I've been hearing was just mixed things about it, and I was a little confused.
Yeah, it seemed more mixed than anything. More fairly positive, more mixed to leaning positive, because it had like a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, not that I put much stock in Rotten Tomatoes, but it is a good indication of, you know, because they told me 2/3 of critics liked it at least. You know,
because I know that because the funny thing is the fact that my older brother Andrew was able to come down for Thanksgiving. I was talking about like what our next live or review is going to be, and I said it's going to be Napoleon, and he was going to be like, "Oh yeah, I was going to see that movie, but I heard some not so great things about." So that's where.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, it seems like most critics were pretty much where you guys are. They were kind of disappointed, but they still liked it. So
yeah.
So
so Mark, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how accurate would you say this was? Since you're the history guy,
I mean, always kind of like grade on a curve. I mean, because I mean,
it's a film, not a documentary.
Yeah, exactly. It's a film, not a documentary. It's like, you know, the whole shooting the top of the pyramid scene that we saw right from the very first trailer.
Yeah.
We know, of course, that didn't happen. I mean, like, the Battle of the Pyramids didn't even happen at the pyramids. It happened like 6 miles away from the pyramids, you know. Happened a few miles away from the pyramids. So, I mean, yeah. But, I mean, so, no, and he never would have done that. But it was just his way of showing he made his mark on history. Other things, like I said, messing up the birthday. I don't know why they would get his birthday wrong. Some other minor things, really, you know, in broad detail, you know. I mean, it's fairly accurate, you know. I mean, there was, you know, there's the thing about the ice at Austerlitz. It's kind of been overblown. Because, you know, at Austerlitz, Napoleon he withdrew his right flank. To make his right flank look weak, to make his center look vulnerable. And he kind of lured them in that case. And then they were hidden behind, the battlefield was there was a lot of fog on the battlefield. And he brings them up just in time, right when they're right where he wants them. He brings them up, and just as the fog clears, they see the French troops coming over the hill. Coming up, and you know, they start to retreat. They retreat across this ice, and we do have French officers' descriptions of, you know, some of them plunging into the ice, and it may have been because of French cannons. So, but I mean, you know, I think he just wanted to show kind of the brutality of it. So I
gotcha.
He's more into the myth about that. It's kind of overblown there, but I mean, at the same time, yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, And as far as the burning of Moscow, we really actually I love the way they were discussing. We really don't know who burned Moscow. We really don't. It was probably the Russians, but we really don't know. So, I mean, yeah. But so, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, maybe I don't know. I'd say it gets 6, but somewhere between a 6 and an 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like maybe around a 7.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, and plus the changes they made, like I said, were understandable. You know, I mean,
yeah, because you got to think of it as a film first and foremost.
Exactly.
You got to dramatize, you got to embellish. And yeah, I used to get really anal about historical accuracy, and sometimes I feel like, okay, I will say in terms of this, when it comes to historical accuracy, if the historical nature of something is more interesting than what you pretended to be on film, then why don't you use the historical like stuff, you know? Like sometimes I've seen, you know, storytellers, directors, filmmakers, whatever you want to call them, they don't use historical accuracy, which is fine, you got to embellish, but sometimes the actual historical account is way more interesting, so it's like, why not use that? Like, but outside of that, more often than not, they use it to dramatize, to embellish, to show, not tell. And you know what, I've been okay with that. I just try to judge it on a film. I try to judge it on a film scale. So, you know, if it's good, if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not, you know? And you got to treat it almost, maybe not like this, but like almost like a fictional story, almost.
Yeah.
It's like this is just about a guy conquering the world. That's
exactly.
So, you know, it's you just got to treat it as that. You can't get so bent out of shape over historical. Like the flags are wrong. Like, dude, do you get pussy? Like, Jesus fucking Christ! Like, come on.
I know. Because the thing,
go out, touch some grass.
The pronunciation, see how it was wrong. What the fuck?
Because the thing is the fact that I'm not, as I said in my review, I'm not a history guy. I'm not an expert on this shit. So the only thing I could do is just judge it as a movie on its own.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, the pronunciations are weird. The pronunciations are like weird, but they don't deter the movie. Like when they pronounce guillotine as guillotine, and I'm like,
that was weird.
Okay, that was kind of weird, but like, all right, sure, I guess, but you know,
exactly, they don't really bother me. I mean,
it's like Caribbean versus Caribbean. Like, who gives a shit?
Exactly.
Tomato.
I mean, I was gonna say, like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like, you know, Gladiator. I mean, Gladiator shares the entire fucking history of the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
but I mean, shit, and who cares?
Braveheart. It was the fucking like battle of bridge. What was the battle of the bridge?
Oh God, Braveheart! Jesus Christ!
The
battle of the bridge, and they're like, it doesn't even fucking take place on a bridge. It's in a field.
Exactly.
Like, come on.
And they did try. They did try to do that there, but I mean, like you said in the director's commentary, it's like it just didn't work. Logistically, it just didn't work because the bridge kept collapsing.
And it was like and William Wallace, his life was during like a time of peace. Like, I mean, you know, so like, like, what are you gonna do? It's like it's movies. It's not. Hell, even some documentaries.
The makeup in, but I mean, he knew it's like it's badass. Who cares? I mean, shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, and even documentaries embellish some shit. Like, I mean, or you know, straight up get stuff wrong. Living Neverland. But yeah, it just you know, it's I don't know, like I just see so many people just get bent out of shape over fucking supposed historical accuracy, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be like that.
I mean, because the thing is,
fucking do that.
Because the thing is the fact that because there's a difference between finding out how historically accurate something is and just seeing things as a movie are like different things. Like one YouTuber that I do watch a lot. I don't know if Mark has watched it. History Buffs, like the YouTuber History Buffs. I know that he made one video about that that terrible Alexander movie. He
Yeah.
said that in terms of historical accuracy, it works, but it fails miserably as a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
Yeah, it does. I mean,
Yeah, I
as a
remember-
movie, yeah.
I remember there was an incident with that where Oliver Stone had the film with him,
Yeah.
and he went through like a metal detector or like a body
Mm-hmm.
scan in an airport, and it wiped the entire reel. So they had to
Oh my
go back and
God.
reshoot it. So that's why
Wow.
it kind of feels like such a mess, because a lot of the movie had to be reshot because of that.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, but I mean that's a perfect example because I mean it's like I said, historically accurate, but just does not fucking work. Jesus. It's a film. No, because I mean I even tried watching the director's cut reluctantly because I mean the first one time was so fucking boring. Director's cut improves on it a little bit. I mean, but it was a little better this time, but yeah, it still just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
to
very.
be fair,
very-
most of Ridley Scott's director's cuts are much better.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
exception of Alien, I've heard that one's worse than the theatrical cut. So, I mean, I trust with whatever he's going to give us next year, if it is actually coming out next year. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm curious to watch it. I might have to do it in multiple sittings, but like, you know, I want to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a
Yeah.
shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking too, John. I thought the same thing. I thought, I bet this is going to be a Kingdom of Heaven situation where people don't like the theatrical cut, but they'll wind up loving the 4-hour cut. So, I'm just amazed he was able to fit so fucking much in there, Jesus, because he fit a ton of history out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's covering he started 1793, went to 1815. He's covering 22 years. History here.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in terms of an entire life that was done better, I would say like Malcolm X was probably done better because that was like an entire life and it like still worked. Here, I don't think it worked as well. It still worked decently, but like not as well as I think it should have been.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Malcolm X is just amazing.
Malcolm X is it's amazing. Yeah.
That I think is
like I have a question for you guys. Like, which movie would you say was the closest you would say to being the most historically accurate? Like the closest you would say.
The only thing I could think of, kind of cheating because it's not really like a historical, but like I think the most is probably Love and Mercy, which like boasts about how accurate it is. Like that, for the most part, that movie is accurate to what happened in Wilson's life. So just from what I've heard, but that seems like it is.
From what I heard that Goodfellas was like, even though they didn't get everything right, it was still for the most part accurate from what I heard. I don't know if Mark will disagree or something.
No. I mean, I've heard that it's pretty accurate too. So, because they work directly with them.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. You know what? Even though this was a fictional film, and he obviously dramatized some stuff, mafia figures who came out of The Godfather were amazed at just how well he described.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Because I mean, the one, I forget the man's name who turned snitch on John Gotti. He talks about coming out of that film and says like, "Wow, I'm a part of this." Man. Like he was like proud, like, "Wow, I'm a part of this world, man." So I mean, like the term Godfather was not used for a mafia don; they called him a don. But I mean, after that, they started using it. So shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's hard to say because I mean, there's always an embellishment.
Yeah.
I mean, so even if you go like biblically accurate, the adaptations of literature, they always change things for the film. It's a completely different format.
I mean, honestly, it seems like unless you built like a time machine and you went back in time and you like recorded literally every single waking moment of someone's life, I mean, there's always going to be like some kind of detail that's going to be different from what actually happened.
And even then, to make it into a coherent whole, you have to edit that and
Exactly.
read out some stuff, you know. So I mean, you're making a
Of
choice
course.
right there.
Exactly.
So I mean,
So,
let's
I
say,
did look up the most historically accurate movies.
mhm,
The number one they have here is Apollo 13, which I mean that's not shocking because there was a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of like I
Oh
mean
yeah.
it's NASA they have so much like records about it, so like so many records about it that that makes sense. But Schindler's List is also up there, Zodiac is up there, 127 Hours is up there, and
mhm.
so
12 years.
like
Too.
12 Years a
No
Slave
years
is
a
up there, The
slave.
Pianist, Milk, All the President's Men, Night to Remember. All of them have been, said to be
Yeah.
very, very historically accurate. So,
Uh, somebody mentioned The Witch in one post. Somebody mentioned The Witch
yeah.
as
Well, I mean, that's in
creating
terms of
that, not that
setting.
actually
Yeah.
happened, but just recreating the
The-
world of the Puritans. Yeah, that you
Yeah.
did a
Robert Eggers
Yeah.
was very, very hands
oh,
on
Yeah.
in terms of
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
accuracy in
with
regards
all
to
of
that
his
because
films, with the light and the Northman too. The Northman, same with
Yeah.
the Northman.
yeah,
Jesus
because
Christ.
he actually researches his films. Like
Yeah.
I was laughing a little bit when Josephine came in for the first time and like she has like her boobs like propped up and whatever. And I just kept laughing because there's this YouTuber, I'll look her up in a second, who is like heavy into historical wardrobes, like historical clothing,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
like who like knows of this. And she had like an entire video on Hollywood people commenting on it's like, oh well, it takes place in 1740, but we can use this material. And she's like, that material wasn't used until like the 1800s. Yeah, but who's gonna know that? And then they're like, oh, we can use this. It was popular around this time. And and she's like, that was popular in the 1790s, but you're making
Yeah.
a movie from the 1740s. It's like, yeah, but it's
Mhm.
the 1700s. It's like, yeah, but that's like using wardrobes from the 1990s in a 1950s movie. That doesn't make sense, right? And it's the
Exactly.
same thing for that. And she's just like, it's so perfectly. She's like, but and then there was one like quote unquote Hollywood producer that was like, she's like, okay, guys, I have this idea for the wardrobe for the women, boobs. It's just like there's so many movies where it's like the women just
Yeah.
have their boobs propped up,
Yeah.
and it's like
Seriously.
that's
Yeah.
not what they were wearing back then. I
And
understand you gotta get your audience, but even then, like, come on, that's a bit ridiculous.
An
So
audience, though.
whenever I see
Men.
whenever I see
man.
a historical film though, and I see the boobs propped up, I always think of that video now. So, it always, I always get a kick out of it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Hmm. Insert ye old serving wench here with boobs propped up to here, in bustier. So, but yeah, it's mm, pretty made. Yeah, that's you get a bunch of costume dramas, and some of them are exactly accurate. But yeah, John said, you always have those issues like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I mean,
So
but I
the
mean,
sorry to cut you off, but the
no, you're fine.
person who made the video was Carolina Zabrowska. Check out her channel; she's really funny, and she has like
Okay.
a lot of like heavy into like historical costuming and clothing,
Oh,
and it's
nice.
very interesting. She has really
Yeah.
good videos on that. So, um, check her out. She's great. I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong. I think she's Eastern European, so sorry if I mispronounced her name. But she's really funny. I really like her videos.
That's good. So
Yeah.
Caroline Browska.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll put it in the chat
Okay.
so people know.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Terrible Lizard says you really liked the film. Glad you liked it. Terrible
Yeah, I
Lizard,
do.
I did too. So
Yeah, we all really liked it. So
yeah. It's a very likable film. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, I love the relationship between them and everything. So Carolina Zabrowska, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So but yeah, I really like the film. It's really good, and I love the performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could. The battle scenes were amazing. Jeez, great.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah. The battle scenes were.
Especially the scene where the British formed the squares. They formed defense. That is how they fought. They did form defensive squares on the Battle of Waterloo. The British
Mhm.
Wellington had form defensive squares, and Napoleon did the same. It was a common tactic. We're the same where you have the cavalry riding around those defensive squares. That's just sublime and really gorgeous, man. It's like, God, Jesus, man. That's incredible. But yeah, Napoleon I see as a tragic figure. He's really very much like a Julius Caesar.
I mean, they mentioned that many times during the film.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Literally many times, and that's not necessarily a compliment. Like they said. So, I mean, for better or for worse, he is Francis Caesar. So,
but yeah, I mean, the scene with the frozen lake, that was just really fucking cool.
Oh,
like, that was probably the best battle scene in the film.
That was,
but yeah, that was, I mean, I watched that in the trailer so much. I'm like, oh, that scene's gonna be fucking awesome, and it was fucking
it was.
But I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. So this is obviously a very, like, we have the Napoleon Bonaparte as our main character, main person of this film, obviously. Did you feel that there was like I'm just trying to find a right way to word this. Like, you think there was like enough like about him, like psychologically or character driven here? Like, because I've noticed some reviews where it's like, oh, it's not very character driven. Like, we don't know enough about these characters that it's like not interesting and like that kind of thing. I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that.
About the character development, or
like the character development and like how character driven it is, because I know I've seen some reviews say like, oh, it's not character driven, we don't know enough about these characters, and it seems too like grounded, I guess. That's not the terminology they used, I forget what they used, but it was like very low level and it wasn't as psychologically interesting as it could have been. I'm just curious to know people's thoughts on that. That's all.
That's fair point. I mean, yeah, I don't think he's trying to. To me, the development really comes from the relationship. The relationship, seeing that's where it really comes in, seeing how he, because it really seems to me he's kind of making a point about how his, about how his kind of relationship kind of paralleled how his relationship with Josephine kind of paralleled his, his military and political career, because it seemed like, because it seemed to me that's where he starts the downfall around the time his relationship with Josephine turns sour, so, which is why specifically that he placed the divorce before the Treaty of Tilsit, even though the Treaty of Tilsit was 3 years before he divorced Josephine. The Treaty of Tilsit, where he signed the treaty with Alexander I in 1807, after like completely destroying the Russian army at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. So, and by the way, he really was kind of a big simp for Alexander I. He was really fascinated by Alexander I, and Alexander I was kind of an enigma in his own right, because Napoleon never could figure him out. Terrible Lizard says the romantic relationship was nuanced and realistic, like they were never cruel to each other. I mean, not cruel compared to Scarface and his wife. True.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he did slap her, even though that didn't actually happen. But
yeah, true. And he was a simple man who was good at large battles. He was a small battle, who wasn't perfect at either. I think that's kind of the point there, is that to me, they were kind of a lot of things he was kind of contrasting how incompetent he was in love versus how at the end of the day, he sacrifices his love for his relationship to Josephine to his ambition.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
And looks like Devin asked a question in the chat.
And Devin has a question. What happened with his son or the second wife that just disappeared?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, they did. Because after his defeat, the Emperor of Prussia, who was her father, he kind of whisked her back with her son. They kind of whisked her back to Austria, and he never saw either one of them again. So, but that is the reason why he was named Napoleon the Son, and that is why when Napoleon's nephew came to power in France later in 1848, he took the name Napoleon III. So, in his little coup of 1852, when he took over as Emperor of France, made himself the new Emperor of France, he named Napoleon III because Napoleon's son would have been Napoleon II. So
Yeah, I was looking that up.
Yeah.
I was looking that up before about Napoleon II because I
mhm.
know the bastard son was like,
Yeah.
I was like, huh, that's interesting.
He had several mistresses later in his life. He actually kind of fell a little bit out of love with Josephine. I mean, he still loved her. He was more of a fondness, you know. He just wasn't as attractive to her as before. She was getting older. He was like 40. She was like 46. So I mean, he took some younger mistresses and
Gotcha.
everything. There's no telling how many bastard sons he had running around all over Europe. But so yeah, and that's ultimately why he took the second wife, even though she really did not want that to happen. And by the way, there were rumors. I don't know if if anything was ever proven, but Alexander the First did visit Josephine after they took the capital after Napoleon was sent to exile in Elba. He did visit Josephine when he was in Paris.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, several times, and they developed kind of a closeness there. So, but then she died. So, yeah, she wore. It was kind of a colder time of the year, and she wore apparently some kind of just like night clothes or anything. She wasn't very. So she was very loosely clothed, not a lot of clothing on, and
Yeah.
apparently caught pneumonia or something like that, and died. So
I
pneumonia
gotcha.
or something like that, and died.
Oh,
Kind of infection. Yeah.
I gotcha.
So yeah. Another good thing. This is another good thing. It didn't go with historical accuracy. Historically, she actually had no teeth. Her teeth had been ruined by
Really?
her teeth had been ruined by chewing on sugar cane. So yeah,
Damn. Wow.
she had no teeth. So good thing her teeth were all rotted out because of chewing on sugar cane. So good thing they didn't go with historical accuracy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
You
would have
met
been like, hey,
yeah.
hey.
Another one. Let me give you a big smoke.
this is why I don't mind fluoride in the water. Give me all the fluoride in the water. Fuck you, General. John, well done.
Yeah, the original Alex Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
The fluoride's in the water that's making the Americans stupid.
Oh God.
That's
Oh
funny.
man. Yeah. A couple more that were mentioned that were historically I want you to mention. Master and Commander, which is true. That is a
Yeah, that's
very,
really accurate. Yeah.
Oh, edit.
yeah. You want to know how naval warfare was back then? Jesus, there's no
Yeah.
better one. Black Hawk Down is said to be very accurate.
Oh,
Yeah. Das Boot.
Oh yeah, Dust Boot.
Das Boot. That's yeah.
But you know what one's the most accurate of them all?
Mhm.
Pearl Harbor, the greatest historical period piece of all time, right, Zach? If you're watching, right, buddy? You know, your favorite movie of all time.
I'm just waiting for Zach in the chat to just go like.
Speaking of Pearl Harbor, though, there's another Pearl Harbor film on the list. Tora Tora Tora.
I've heard that's very
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, my mother loved that film. I remember watching that film with my mother because the fascinating thing about that film is it actually tells the story from both points of view.
Yeah.
From
I've
the
heard
American
that.
and from the Japanese points.
Akira Kurosawa was uncredited with doing the Japanese scenes for
Yeah,
that
I
movie.
think he did. Yeah, I read the same thing. Yeah, he directed the Japanese things. Yeah, very fascinating. So, but yeah, but as with any movie, you get, you always get a bunch of, I don't know. I just view it as a movie, not a documentary, as long as it's true in broad outline, which pretty much was.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, so like a lot of like the for instance the like I said the coup very did nearly fail. It really did very almost fail because they really did throw a fit and try to lay hands on him, and he had to flee the room. And his brother really did save the day by saying, "Look, if my brother becomes a tyrant, I'll run my sword through him." So, and then he brought in the troops, and then that was that. So, yeah. So, but I think that's about all we can say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
I mean, I would say just judge it for yourself.
Yeah,
I mean, people are
go
dumb, so
give it a chance. Give it a chance, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard I've seen I've seen some people say they want to wait for the 4 hour cut, and that's fair, you know.
Mhm.
So, but
But,
it is what it is.
yeah.
So, I mean,
And
some people,
our overall judgment mark is
yeah. Oh wait, is wait, a dag nabbit. I'll find it somewhere. Well, all right, you heard it here.
okay.
Oh, well, I like it. All right. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us.
And stay tuned for our next review in 2 weeks.
Weeks.
We will be discussing Hayao Miyazaki's next animated feature film, The Boy and the Heron, or as the original Japanese title was called, How Do You Live? So,
which honestly is a better title, but that's just me.
oh yeah, I think How Do You Live is a much better title than The Boy and the Heron. So, and I know I'm that is like my number one most anticipated film of the year, and I'm sure it is for Kaylee's.
Oh yeah.
Right, Mark?
Hey, I'm excited too. Now that I have my necessary knowledge of
Yeah,
Studio
are you
Ghibli now.
are you gonna start catching up on it before the movie comes out, Mark?
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking me. I'm like, I
Yeah.
already
No,
caught
no,
up.
no, Mark, since he's
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
On it. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So
By the
stay
way,
tuned.
Howl's Moving Castle's fucking overrated, and you can fight
It
me
is
on that.
Yeah, Howl's Moving Castle. I agree. It is overrated. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much, and see you later, everybody. Once again, we have brought light into the world. You're welcome here.